So now I'm going to start recording for anyone who couldn't make it to the class. This is the section that we're in still. So this is the geometry tab. And we're still in plane geometry, which is this first section right here, where we're in these couple of shapes. And these will probably be the shapes that you have on your test. They're the most common shapes. So we started out with rectangle and square yesterday. And we're going back up to triangles. So if you click on triangles, we kind of mentioned this already, but if you're doing the index cards or you're doing one sheet of your notebook paper as a place to, track everything you know about the shape, it's this top part that you want to draw and recreate for yourself, or ask yourself if you already know this. But this is what you want to do for where we're going to go from two-dimensional, the flat version of the shape, to the prisms or three-dimensional version. So you might as well, what we were saying, is leave a page front and back, depending on how big you write, for the whole shape together so that you can get everything about angles, everything about how many lines, everything about perimeter, area, and then volume when we get to it. So this definition here, a triangle has 3 sides and 3 angles. The 3 angles always add up to 180 degrees. So this is just rules of the triangle again, in case you get one of those questions that are just about the definition or just about the freshman level like we were saying. So the reason why we're going to take 2 days at least to do triangles is because there are much more information about the triangle. So this next section is talking about equilateral, isosceles, and scalene triangles. There are 3 special names given to triangles that tell how many sides or angles are equal. So this is very important, again, in your vocabulary, because sometimes in a word problem, you will get, there is an isosceles triangle. And you have to understand that the 2 longer sides that they give are the sides that are equal. So if they say there's an isosceles triangle with a side length of 10 and another side length of 5, what you're supposed to understand is that the 2 sides that are equal are 10, and the smaller side is going to be 5. So this comes back to if you have to draw it on your scrap paper, just from a word problem where it's not given to you as a symbol. You're going to have to know the difference between equilateral, which there's a clue with the word, with the prefix EQU being equal. So there's a difference between an equilateral triangle and an isosceles triangle. So here, basically you have from the definition, it's either 3 sides are equal, 2 sides are equal, or no sides are equal. And this is what you can draw out for yourself. What you're saying by doing this little drawing with the angle is that all of the angles are the same. What you're saying, if you'd mark the line on the side, just like we saw with square and rectangle, you're saying that the side lengths are the same. So here, the 2 angles are the same. And here, in this third example, nothing is equal, which is just a different style of triangle. We have one more style of triangle that I think we're going to save till Monday and Tuesday instead, and that's the right triangle, where we're going to do the Pythagorean theorem. So here it's giving you clues on how you can remember. Equal is equilateral, that all the sides and all the angles are equal. Isosceles means equal legs, and we have 2 legs, right? Also, isosceles has 2 equal sides joined by an odd side. So what they're using is SOS to say sides, and odd side. And then scalene means uneven or odd. So this is, again, can kind of be a lot of vocabulary because we did all the angles, like acute, obtuse, right, reflex, and now we're doing the parts of, or the kinds of a triangle. But this is what you can do before you come on to class, is just study the vocabulary for a couple of minutes, maybe like 5 to 7 minutes every day, so you can make sure you remember it. Like we said, the college should be open in May after the spring semester. And if you test in June, you want to be able to remember all the things that we're doing now at the end of March and beginning of April. So now coming down a little bit more, just going over the angles. And we already looked at this section on Math is Fun, but acute triangle, that means the angles are less than 90. So you're getting this idea that all of the angles are tight inside. The right triangle is the one that we're going to work on Monday and Tuesday. That has the 90-degree angle. So even if it's flipped around and upside down, you still can recognize it if it has the box here. That means the 90 degrees. And then an obtuse triangle is an angle that is wider, bigger than, or greater than the 90 degrees. So coming down a little bit more, you could be combining all of those vocabulary words. So this one is a right isosceles triangle, and it's asking you can you guess what the equal angles are? So here, if you're saying that this is a right isosceles triangle and this is 90 degrees, you're going by the definition of the triangle again, that all of the internal angles are 180 degrees. So if you're going to subtract 90 for the right angle, that means you have 90 left, right? And then because it's an isosceles right triangle, you're dividing the other 90 in half. So hopefully that makes sense, right? So each angle would be how much? Someone can shout that out. How much would the angle be?
If you divide 90, you said?
Yes.
45.
45.
Yes, exactly. Right. So now this is where you don't have things labeled. You're only going off of the definition. If you get a question like maybe there's an X here or a question mark here, and they tell you it's a right isosceles triangle, the only thing that you're doing is taking the understanding of the triangle, that there's 180 degrees, subtracting the 90 that you do know, and then dividing the other part, the rest of the 180 degrees in half. So this would be an example where there's no number listed. It's just a box for the 90 degrees. And the fact that it's a right isosceles triangle giving you a clue that the other angles must be 45. So this is an example of relying on the definitions of the words that you know and the rules of a triangle. Because they're not going to tell you that the internal angles equal 180. That's really what they're asking if you know, right? So coming down, there's another, just like the other page, there's a way for you to adjust the triangle and go to an acute triangle, go to the obtuse triangle. So this is some of the vocabulary that we did last week and this week. Scrolling down a little bit more, the interior angles always add up to 180. So this is another way that you can, change the angles, but you will see that it's always going to equal 180 degrees. So this is just, again, the rule of the triangle, and you seeing that work. They're also going over the perimeter, which we said was pretty easy. It's just the A side, the B side, and the C side. So you're just adding up the lengths of the outside lines of the triangle. And now here, this is what we're going to go over today, is the area of a triangle. So this formula, I think, is very easy, but this is where it starts to include more letters. So what I would say is, I like the way it is on Math is Fun, but I do think that Khan Academy is very good also. I haven't watched all of Aztec, but I know that the lessons I like the way the lessons are done. So I haven't watched them for area of a triangle per se to know specifically, but I'm imagining that it's still very good. So if you're going to do the page or the note cards or the digital, we said maybe if you do a Google document, what I think is good to do is always to start with the details of the shape, like the rules of the shape, the facts of the shape, and you drawing the shape out yourself is a really good way to have a memory when it comes to your test. So like we said before, the more senses that you can include, if you can say something to yourself, if you can draw it out yourself, if you can look at the vocabulary words, and then even outline what each letter of a formula means, it's just going to be more things that are a trigger to you when you see it again on your test. So this one is saying that the area is half the base times the height. And the thing that is different about this formula is that instead of saying length times height or width times height, or length times width, they're using the word base, that the triangle is always sitting on a base. But other than that, it's exactly the same as the rectangle formula. So the thing about a triangle is that it is half of a rectangle. And that's really the way that I remember this formula. So here it's saying B is the distance along the base. So B is standing for base. H is the height of the triangle, which is going from the base to the point here. And this is where you're going to get a right angle, knowing that it's coming straight down perpendicular to the base. So what you have to remember is A equals 1/2 BH. So this is them writing it out with the times, but a lot of times you'll just see it like this with the B and the H next to each other. So what they're saying is this is actually the exact same thing. Saying BH divided by 2 is the same as saying 1/2 of, or 1/2 times the base times the height. So this is what you want to, you can draw this out for yourself so that you always know what the height is. You can draw this out for yourself so that you always know the base. A lot of times an extra side will be labeled that you don't need when you're doing your finding the area. So you sometimes are going to get extra information that you have to know not to include. Sometimes they'll put something here and even here, but that might be for perimeter. Their question might be asking you about area. So then in that case, you would ignore the length over on the left and ignore the length over on the right and just focus on substituting the things you need in this area formula, which is the base and then the height if it was labeled. So this example says, what is the area of this triangle? There's the base and there's the height. This is another example that if this side length is labeled, you don't need the side length. You need the actual height of the triangle, which is going from here to here. So in those examples where you have those obtuse triangles, like if we had one like this, if you could imagine that the height of the triangle is right here, if you could flip this around, let's see if I can. So your side lengths may be long, right, like this, but the height is only from here to here. So you have to be careful about how things are labeled and which formula you're actually going to use. So this one is saying you're going to do 1/2 the base times the height. You're putting the base at 20, the height at 12. So 1/2 of 20 is 10, and 10 times 12 is 120. So even though you're using this 1/2 as a fraction, normally in the formula, you can just think of it as divided by 2, like it showed in this formula. Whichever way is easier for you to remember is a good idea. All right, so what you're saying as you do it, which way do you want to remember it, and do it the same way every single time. Another thing that you could do is say 20 times 12 and then cut that in half, because the formula is always going to be half of what the full rectangle would be. So coming down a little bit more, this is the part where it's talking about why is the area half of the base times the height. So imagine you doubled the triangle, flip it around one, or flip it around one of the upper edges to make it a square-like shape. So what it's saying is if you doubled this, you would have this part that's here that's white. If you, now this is a parallelogram because it's slanted, but if you cut off this part that's now darker yellow and put it over here, you would have a full rectangle. So the formula has to make sense for you. If you're saying a regular rectangle would be length times the height or base times the height, then a triangle is now half of that. So this is like we were saying the other day, I think Daisy asked that question about remembering complementary and supplementary. You want to just be able to say, I can remember a couple of things that then trigger the rest of my memories. That we're going to have a flood of memories, but just coming from a couple of things. So every time you learn something new, you want to attach it to something that you already learned, because that will make it easier to remember. Instead of saying that you have to remember something from scratch in a way completely, you want to say to yourself, okay, now that I'm learning this formula, why is the area half of the base times the height. And even changing from base to length or width is, very fluid, right? So it doesn't matter if you call this a length. The reason why we're changing is because we're talking about a different shape. So knowing why that's happening is going to help you remember. And then clicking on the quiz, this is now going over a definition type of question. When you see that there's 3 lines, that's that they're all equal. So you're deciding what kind of triangle it is. Then here, how many regular equilateral triangles are there? Which of the following correctly describes this triangle? So these are all still definition. Here, finally, you're getting to area. So now in an example like this, the base is the 8 plus the 3, right? They're just showing you the diagram broken up in a different way. Here also is like we talked about, the length of this side is a 6, but the height of the triangle is actually 5.8. So you have to be careful about which numbers you need to actually use the area formula and get the right answer. And here's another example. The area of the triangle is 42. Whenever they're giving you the area, like we talked about with algebra, that means instead of multiplication, you should be thinking about doing division because you already have the total of the area. So if the formula is area equals 1/2 the base times the height, you're not going to be multiplying to find the area. You're going to be dividing the area by the base in order to get the height. So now I'm going to stop sharing and see if you have any questions. So you can unmute yourself if you have a question. Does anybody have any questions? Not yet?
Not yet.
So now what you want to do, we just went over, some things that I think you should highlight off of the page. But if you take your notes, I'm going to text you the quiz, of course, to make it easy. You might already have it up, but you're just going to send me the screenshot of your results. I'm looking by your results to see if we are going too fast. So if everyone's getting 80, 90, 100, then I'm saying, okay, we can just do a formula a day. If someone's getting 50, 40, something like that, then that's too fast. You need to be able to get 60, 70, well, let me not say that. You need to be able to get 80, 90, 100. Because what you're trying to say is that you've mastered it to the point that when it comes up in 2 months, you're going to be able to get the answer still. So, go ahead.
Do you want me to place it on document?
What, your
Like the screenshot?
results? You don't have to. An easy way, it depends on what kind of computer you're working on, how you capture the screen. So I know I have an HP, I'm doing like a snippet, they call it nowadays.
Yeah, that snipping, that's what I would use.
So if you make use the snipping tool, you're just gonna, that creates a photo that then you can email me the photo if you want. Some people are working on their cell phone, I can tell, where when you get the screenshot, it might be easier just to text it then on Remind as opposed to opening up your email. So either way is fine. The only reason that you're doing this is to count for more time attending this online class too. So what I'm saying is this is a little bit more involved than the easier ones that we've done, I think. So I'm still going to say that it's going to take you 20 minutes. You're going to get at least 1 minute per question, and there's 10 questions. But you have to write your notes, I know, from the Math is Fun page. You might get one wrong that you have to review. So I'm rounding that up to another 20 minutes. Now, for the lesson part of it, I'm also saying that I loaded at least like an hour into Khan Academy. I'm counting that as tomorrow morning's time. If you do the Khan Academy today or tomorrow between 9 and 10, then that's at least like another hour of time. And it's gonna be just different versions, different ways of looking at the triangle. I know he rotates on Khan Academy, he rotates the triangle, which is very good because you never know how you're gonna get it. It's not always sitting on its base. So sometimes you have to be creative. You have to use your imagination to picture a shape, floating around, which is why it's good to go on Math is Fun and click it so that you can kind of play around with how a triangle could look. The base, sometimes, technically the base could be on the top of the triangle if they flipped it upside down, So you still have to look for the base and the height, even if it's on its left side, even if it's upside down. That's why we're doing Khan Academy, definitely. Now the Aztec is all of the shapes. So that's a longer, bigger lesson that's gonna then cover the trapezoid, which we haven't gotten to, and the circle, which we haven't gotten to. So that is really like the week's worth of lessons, So we're kind of saying this is a lot to come on to this class and do a quiz. That's at least 45 minutes, 50 minutes. If you're doing anything else, you're close to the 3 hours a day. But the Aztec lesson is really to stretch out over the whole week next week as we go through all the two-dimensional shapes.
Okay.
So send it in the easiest way for you is the short answer. If you want to save it on your computer using the snipping tool, because that's where you're working, you can just email me the picture of the snippet that you took. If you're on your phone and just hitting the button to screenshot is easy, then you can send that on Remind as a text.
Okay. The tests that we were supposed to do prior, I didn't, but I don't recall sending you any. I know I was logging into my, Khan Academy?
Uh-huh. So
Yeah.
Khan Academy, you don't have to send.
No, I mean, Math is Fun.
Okay. So, well, what I'm going to do that I've been like threatening to do since Monday is send you the digital log. So I'm definitely going to do that today before noon.
Okay.
If you have done something, just put it on the log. At this point, I trust all of you. You know what I mean? Like this kind of a class, like we said before, it's not like regular school. I know that you're only doing this because you have a goal, right? If you tell me I did all the quizzes on Math is Fun and I forgot to do the screenshot, then why would you lie to me, right? I'm not going to assume that you're lying by any means. You're just going to say, I spent 30 minutes doing Math is Fun and put that on the log. So what I'm going to do is compare the log that you send me with, I'm looking at Aztec all the time, and even that, if you do 25 minutes, that's getting rounded to 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Like it's not to the minute, because even in class, we would have a 15-minute break. You know what I mean? Even if you leave or you come in at 9:05, that's acceptable. Sometimes if you leave at 11:55, a couple of times, that's acceptable also. So what you're doing is you're aiming for the 3 hours a day. If you didn't screenshot me before, I'm assuming you did it for all the times that you actually came on to the class. So just put it on the log, but I am gonna send that out because I do think that was a really good idea to do it digitally. And the goal is gonna be, I'm gonna share it with you on Google because I have your Gmail account from when we did an essay before. But I think while you're working, you can just open it and say, oh, I did 30 minutes, Math is Fun. Then the next time you do something, I was on Khan Academy for 60 minutes. Like you're just doing a estimate and rounding up to the nearest minute. And then I can just check it because it will be shared between us already because I'm gonna be the one sending it to you, if that makes sense. Okay. So then you don't even have to send me logs anymore. You'll just have to update them. Is everybody understanding that?
Yes, because
so,
I haven't even made a log.
I'm gonna make it because the one that I sent you was the one we made in our department, which was a Word document. I do think it's easier though, if you're working online, to just use the log on as well.
I can use that, yeah.
So that's what I'm gonna send to everyone, that I have your Gmail, I will share it with you. If I don't have your Gmail account, then you can do this yourself if you want to just create a digital log. I'll send you a Word document that's more Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, with just a block for time, versus the one that we made was kind of set to be printed, really, and then for you to write on. I'm gonna just do one that's either you're gonna do it digitally and we're gonna share it on Google. If I have your Gmail, that's the easiest way. If not, you can still do it as a Word document and just send it to me at the end of the week. I'm only using it for the things that you can't track online though, which is if you did something on Math is Fun or you did typing or reading outside of one of the online platforms. So something that I can't see is really what the log is for. But I'll send a little bit of instruction with it too, just to say anytime you're doing anything, if you're reading the newspaper, you can track that for 15 minutes. You know, if you're speed reading, which I think is still good to do, for 15, 30 minutes, you can write that down. So I'll make up a little suggestion because I think that one of the challenges with doing class like this is that it breaks our routine. Like I sent you that funny, I thought it was funny, video about a morning routine. Sometimes once something is broken, it's like there's a little bit of a tornado, you know? So I think like saying to yourself, I'm gonna do this from 9:15 to 10. I'm gonna come on the class from 10 to 10:30. I'm gonna do Math is Fun from 10:30 to 11. I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna read from 11:15 to 11:45. You know what I mean? Like setting up a little bit of a routine for yourself will help you log and at least give you like an expectation of how many hours you can still do. And like we said, even if you have to change the time and do it after lunch or do it in the evening or do it in the early morning, you're still going to be able to log that time. So any other questions?
No.
Okay, so then try out area of a triangle on Math is Fun. I'm going to text that to you. Go back tomorrow. If you can't do anything else today, then tomorrow go to Khan Academy because that is the triangle lesson. And there's a couple, I think 3 sections of practice on there to get some more fill in the blank and multiple choice style. And then tomorrow we're going to answer questions and try out some word problems. So that's what I'm going to share on the screen. It's just a couple different word problems to do live. So that also means you want to bring some paper. So tomorrow's class will be you working out a couple of problems. So make sure you have paper and pencil, and we'll probably be able to get through like at least, I think 3 to 5 problems.
Okay.
All right, then have a great day. I'll
too.
see you
Okay.
tomorrow.
Yeah,
I'll
ma'am.
send you my screenshots.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Have a good
Bye.
day.
All right, have a good one. All right, bye-bye.
Bye. God bless, guys.
Okay.